Welcome back to Authenticity and the module Identity. I want you to buckle in, folks, because this one here could be rough for some of you. This is, in my opinion, what the majority of people need to face about themselves. And the fact of the matter is that all suffering comes from identity, especially prolonged suffering. If you go into porta potties on construction sites or stalls in bathrooms and you see all that stuff that's written on the walls, these are all the things that are in people's unconsciousness that they haven't brought to the light of day. They haven't been able to safely process these things. And that's why when they're all alone and the world is gone and it's just them, they're still writing this stuff on the walls when there's no one else around. So they're doing it for themselves. This is a indication to me of the collective shadow or the collective unconscious. And until these things are able to express safely and dissipate back into the ether, the void, we're going to have to experience them in a larger level on the collective until it regains balance. But that's just an introduction into why it's important for you to look at identity. Identity, meaning it's only for you. Okay, so not for the people that you've worn different identities for and become these different versions of yourself, different identities, which are just repeated habits. Okay, I'm going to talk now in this module, which some of you may find uncomfortable, about the truth of identity. And it's very important if you want to be free of your mind's enslavement that you are going to pay attention to what I have to say about identity, because you're probably not going to hear this type of stuff. I know you're not going to hear this type of inquiry or investigations in those same people that are writing this stuff that you would never think they would be the ones writing it if you saw them in the societal stage show. Like Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. Most people are pretending to be what they're not, and they still haven't unraveled or processed the stuff that's in their subconscious mind. All right, so let's dive into identity. So what is an identity? I would like to start by looking at some definitions of the word identity. Let's look at the monster itself. Webster's dictionary says the distinguishing character or personality of an individual. Further, Webster's definition of identification is the psychological orientation of the self in regard to something. So right there it's saying in regard to something. But if you are always with you could be with a partner for 30 years. If you lay your head down at night, no one else is there. Your kids, your boss, your husband cannot follow you. Wife cannot follow you into your psyche. You are always alone in your psyche, and this is why the majority of people are so distracted and don't look into things that have been commonly accepted that shouldn't be. So, in regard to something such as a person or a group, with a resulting feeling of close emotional association. There you go. Close emotional association. How many things have you had close emotional association that turned out to be untrue? I'll wait. I want you to think about that. Close emotional association. We've had close emotional association to things that were facts for us and then turned out to not be true. So that's not reliable. It goes on and says it's a largely, unconscious process whereby an individual models thoughts, feelings, and actions after those attributed to an object that has been incorporated as a mental image. It's just fancy talk for saying that they don't really know why a person adopts an identity to whatever particular identity they adopt to. So how do you interpret that? They're defining it because my eyes keyed in on some parts and we just discussed them. Excuse me. The fact that it's an emotional process and an unconscious one. The same one that people aren't talking or dealing with the politics or the sexual nature or the violence that has been displayed on the public stalls when no one else is around, because it's unconscious. It's in the unconscious. It needs to be brought to the conscious and dealt with. And one of the biggest things for us as human beings in the unconscious is, who am I? Why am I here? I go into detail in what I call the core abandonment in 8 levels of mind. But for now, let's just continue. Whereby an individual models thoughts, feelings, and actions. Cool. It is being said that identity is not for the individual, but in direct relation to a person, place, or thing. Well, that makes sense to me because a lot of people get their identity from their relationships, meaning family, domestic, work relationships. All these different relationships become a person's identity. But if you change those relationships, you no longer have that identity. This is what's called rock bottom or an identity crisis, which is part of my story. Not that it's important anymore, but at one point it was, to push me to the rebirth. They also mention the word character, and this is what I have found, which is what my mind invents and repeats patterns that interact with various environments and situations. So, all identities are actually based on repetition, the law. We can create new identities whenever we want, but the majority of these are created unconsciously. So, are we saying that identity is really nothing but a story that we make real with belief? Yeah, that's what we're saying. I am, because the moment without any mental story, in this moment without any mental story, remember, this moment is the only moment there is, and I'll say it in front of a firing squad. I don't know what's going to happen 2 seconds from now, 5 minutes from now. Only my imagination makes me believe that's true. Sure, I can dig into my mental highlight reel, but this is the conduit that's bringing that true in the moment. All right? So there is no past and there's no future. So if that's true, then you actually don't have an identity. Let's see that in instant replay. You don't have an identity. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to drag around an identity and make it so in the moment. And this is why most people must mind control and create mirrors around them that constantly mirror back to them their self-importance. This is what has been known as boundaries. On an innocent level, boundaries are okay as far as self-preservation. But when it comes to boundaries that directly stroke your ego and give you your sense of self, then Authentiquity's perspective is that's not necessary, and it's definitely not in alignment. So I've discovered the reason we believe in and created these identities in the first place was to escape this truth. Okay, the truth that in this moment we do not have an identity, and it takes a tremendous amount of effort to keep one real. As your voices in your head, the events in your life, the people around you are constantly showing you that it's not true. But if we escape this truth, we still will eventually have to come face to face with our true selves. We have been trained in society that we have to justify our existence moment to moment. Tell me if that's not true. By acquisition, by accomplishing, promotions, things of this nature. The natural laws of competition in nature have been emulated by humans, just like in martial arts. A lot of martial arts have been created to mimic various animals. Well, we did the same thing with that, but it's completely out of balance. Wouldn't you agree? So when we actually subtract ourselves back to pure existing, meaning the I, we experience this emptiness is not enough. It's a feeling like, he's just trying or she's trying to fill the void. Well, the void is the truth. The void, when we're existing as this moment itself, there's no substance, but there's no lack either. That's why in Zen it's important, not important, they use koans, and one of them is what in this moment is lacking. It's an infinite question, a run-on sentence, if you will. It just goes on for infinity. So when we actually subtract back to pure existing, we experience this emptiness is not enough. This is why we need to train to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. All right. We have to be somebody in all aspects of our life, or else we'll be running towards things our entire life if we don't understand the truth of this. Okay. We have to be somebody in all aspects of our life, which is the main program of society, to be somebody. As the definition of identity states, associate ourselves by creating beliefs and emotions that define us. What happens if we let this game go? Because it ultimately is a game. We never actually become something. That's something we're going to discuss next. We had to justify our attendance in school by affirming our names, and then we taught to sit and listen until we're called upon. These behaviors take us out of the natural flow of our existence and create programs that make us believe that we're not okay unless identified. Let's see that in instant replay. These behaviors take us out of the flow of our existence natural unfolding, and create programs, mental, that make us believe we're not okay unless we're identified as something. Now, how often have you believed in identities that have changed over the years, let alone daily? So looking back at the definition of identity, which the missing link is a course that will do a deep dive and help you end the game of identity forever, if you're interested. So I was saying that we will see that identity is so it's just emotional association. What is an emotion really when it comes to who we say we are? The emotions that backed up our previous identities that we may no longer even identify with were true then, but are they true now? So change is inevitable in the human experience. Remember, the I is the only thing that is beyond change. That's where we should create our foundation, set up our house on, not on these fleeting ideas of self that are proved wrong by our voices, circumstances, events, and the natural laws of life, like destruction, meaning those that we love, leaving this plane of existence. That right there usually crushes a lot of people's identities. It does not need to come to that. The emotions that back up our previous identities that we may no longer identify with. So change is inevitable in the human experience as we age physically and also establish new identities as our experiences change. So in our always changing lives, is any identity reliable? Like that guy, right? Is any identity reliable? I'd be a thinking man now. No, it's not. I don't even need to think about it because, again, I don't know what's going to happen 2 seconds from now, 5 minutes from now. So everything I'm stacking or banking on as who I am or what I'm doing can be taken just like that. So we need to get comfortable in the uncomfortable, in the truth of ourselves that all human beings are running from. And I discussed this in detail in the Core Abandonment in the 8 Levels of Mind. So is identity even useful or necessary? That's my next question. Who are you? You. Who are you without your story? You're existing in this moment. Maybe you don't realize as this moment. That's what you are. Right now. This moment. People all the time have some type of near-death experience in this moment. What happens? They merge with the universal awareness, the universal mind. Meaning the me that we discussed earlier is gone. The I is all that remains. And all, source. But in that moment, when they lose the belief in who they are because their body is separate now, or seemingly separate, what is the congruent aspect of their stories? They become the entirety. They're able to have their awareness anywhere at any point. Down the hall in the hospital room, hearing conversations they shouldn't be, floating up outside, seeing their own body, knowing what their relatives are doing halfway around the world. Whatever it is, we become the moment when the me consciousness lets go. So there's a clue. If you don't know that, or you'd like to look into it more, which is an obsession of mine, start looking into some near-death experiences, and the fact that there's a pattern would probably silence any naysayer. But anyway, so who are you without the story based on time, which can't be found except inside your mind and no other mind? The version of you that is you only exists within you. So you give it life. I'll see you in the next module.